Good morning on this Sunday, July 31st, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. The AJC's poll is the latest to show Georgia voters may choose a split ticket at the top, with incumbents Senator Raphael Warnock and Governor Brian Kemp in the lead against their opponents. Also, the Fulton County judge in the Trump election probe disqualifies DA Fani Willis in the questioning of Senator Burt Jones, who's also running for lieutenant governor. And we now know Hyundai will get $1.8 billion of tax breaks and other incentives in order to build its electric vehicle plant in Georgia. Melita, Phil, Theron, and Martha are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
The Atlanta Journal-Constitution is out this week. It's polling that shows what we've been reporting here for weeks, a split ticket when it comes to the race for Senate and governor in Georgia. Well, let's start with the governor's race, which shows that incumbent Governor Brian Kemp with a 5-point lead over Democrat Stacey Abrams. Martha, welcome back. I'll start with you because there's really a lot to digest here in the crosstabs of this poll. First, this appears really good news for Governor Kemp, but is it troubling at all that he's not over 50%?
No, I don't think so, because this is the first time that a Republican has polled against a Democrat in a summer poll. Nathan Deal didn't do it. Sonny Perdue didn't do it. So it is the first time that's happened. So I'm not worried about that. But also, I just think it's really hard to make the case. And I know that Stacey Abrams is just really starting her campaigning. But it's really just hard to make the case that I'm going to do it better than the guy that's done it really well. And there are very few people in Georgia, maybe politicos, other folks, but there are very few people in Georgia that are unhappy with what Governor Brian Kemp has done.
Well, Theron, the crosstabs show that Stacey Abrams is not where really she needs to be when it comes to African-American male voters. We saw former President Trump make inroads here. Is this concerning for the Abrams campaign, and what does she need to do?
Well, surprise, right? I mean, you've heard me talk about this privately, and I've said it kind of publicly, what this poll shows, and that is that 80% of the people who were asked the question at this moment in July, African-American voters said they're going to vote for Stacey Abrams. But what I'm optimistic about, Lori, is that you also have roughly about 10% who said that they're undecided. And I believe that majority of those 10% that are undecided will go Stacey Abrams' way. But look, the black male voter problem in Georgia for Democrats is real. And it's really based on economics. It's also, I think, based on the Democrats' inability to really make sure that we're continuing to focus on this very key and important block. Because you've heard me say many, many times that the woman vote, particularly the black woman vote and Asian vote and white woman vote in the Democratic Party is very important. So I do think that Stacey Abrams has time. And we got a very, very popular African-American male who's in the U.S. Senate, and that's Reverend Raphael Warnock. So you'll see Abrams and Warnock come together to really tackle this enthusiasm problem that we have in the party, and specifically focus on black men and the black vote in its totality.
We'll talk about the Senate race in just a second, but Phil, I want to ask you, we meet viewers all the time when we're out, and we know our viewers are also voters. So I met quite a few this past week, and when I talked to some of them, they said that they can't forget the fact that when other states were shut down, many of them, blue states, of course, Georgia opened back up, so kids were able to be back in school. Kids could still play youth sports when those were shut down in places like California. And they fear a return to mandates as, you know, these COVID cases start ramping up. And some of these folks are Democratic voters who are supporting Governor Kemp. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm finding this too when I go around. I know we all go around and talk with people. And that AJC poll you're referencing to found that over 75% of all the respondents thought, and quote, it was extremely important when it comes to inflation, the economy, and of course that goes to keeping this state open. Governor Brian Kemp was the first governor in America to keep the state open, and I think that's why there's hemorrhaging black votes, they're hemorrhaging independent votes. The Insider Advantage Fox 5 poll, incidentally, it just broke when we're taping, mirrors somewhat the AJC poll. That has Brian Kemp up 49% to 44% with a big undecided block. And I don't know how that's going to break there, and we could argue about that. I will say this, and we'll have to talk about it in another month or so. We could be heading for runoffs if nobody can get over 50%.
Melita, it's early. I mean, we're not even at Labor Day, so I mean, there's a lot of time.
It's very early, but Abrams is more aggressively getting out into communities you wouldn't expect her. She was on Thursday afternoon at Little Japan restaurant in Royston, where she had a crowd of more than 100. And then she went on to Clayton, where she had a crowd of more than 300 who braved a rainstorm to get there, had a rainbow over the venue as people were arriving and toweling off. Her speech was very well received, far better received than some of those who planned the rally expected. And when she talks about safety around guns, and when she talks about protecting reproductive freedom, even in that ruby red territory, she got a very enthusiastic response.
Well, let's turn to the Senate race and a look at the numbers from the AJC poll. Senator Raphael Warnock at 46 to Herschel Walker's 43%, statistically very close. Melita, back to you. Senator Warnock is sitting on a hefty campaign war chest and has already spent tens of millions of dollars. Should it worry Democrats that he's not up over 50%?
Not yet. And I think you're seeing the ad wars heat up with more emphasis on the lies that Walker has told about his background. And Warnock is beginning to get away from the puppy and Christmas lights that Martha always refers to, and more into the hard-hitting substance of the differences between the two of them.
Martha.
Well, and it's not just me that says puppies and Christmas lights. It's kind of like everybody refers to Senator Warnock that way. And that's not a bad thing, totally. But the thing that I would be concerned about if I were Reverend Warnock is he spent $25 million between he and the Chuck Schumer PAC, and basically they're still in the margin of error. There was one outlier poll that showed him more ahead, but nobody really counts that. Also, to Theron's point earlier about African American vote, while he's a little better, he's only at 85%, which I think if you follow Georgia politics for a long time, you know there's two numbers you got to look at. You got to be up over 90% of the African American vote, but of the total vote, you got to reach that 31% mark of African American voters. If they reach that 31%, they win everything, meaning the Democrats. If it's below that 31%, it could be a mixed ticket or it could be all Republican.
All right. Well, Theron, there's one more race I want to look at. If you want to comment on the Senate race, that's fine. But it's still early, but you said a lot of the Democrats who voted for Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger in the primary would come back and vote Democrat in November. So are you as shocked as I was at these poll numbers in that race? Raffensperger, as you saw, a 14% lead over B. Wynn, 46% to 32%. There it is. But still a lot of undecideds at 15%.
Well, Lori, you love it when I look into the camera and I'm going to look at the right one and say, Democrats, come on back home. No, real quick, I agree with Martha's analysis. She's spot on. And we also got to make sure as Democrats that we have 28% of the white vote as well. If we hit those numbers, we'll be fine. But B. Wynn has got time as well. It's early. Look, Secretary Raffensperger is, and Brian Robinson and others have said this, Phil and Martha, he is the most popular Secretary of State in the country. How he handled the attacks by former President Donald Trump, I think, gained a lot of sympathy from Republicans. And I think there are some independent voters that think that he's doing a good job. But once B. Wynn clearly remind voters of some of the things that he has not done, particularly around election security, voting machines. We saw some brief things happen in some metro counties. There's still a disconnect between his office and county offices and how they should run elections. Once all those things are highlighted and then she's able to debate him, I think you'll see that race tighten.
Phil, your thoughts on those numbers?
Well, I think it's interesting that B. Wynn is doing so badly because the word's getting out how radical she is. And when you talk about election integrity, which I think whether you like Brad Raffensperger or not, we had a great law that the Republicans passed for election integrity. I think people are more comfortable. They may not like Raffensperger, but they're comfortable. There are a lot of undecideds, but I think that when B. Wynn talks about, more drop boxes, more absentee ballots, looser restrictions, people aren't going to like that.
Melita, B. Wynn, Brad Raffensperger obviously has all of the name ID. B. Wynn needs to really get out there and introduce herself
She has
more.
the money to do that. She's kept up with him on fundraising, even though she's not an incumbent. And I believe the other Democrats on the ticket, Stacey Abrams has been defending her and pointing her out. The other Democrats on the ticket will be boosting her chances. And she's formidable, and she's tough, and she's a fierce fighter. And she's an immigrant daughter, and she comes from fighting folks who fled Vietnam, and I think she has a lot of appeal, and time will tell. But she's got the capacity to make up this gap.
We'll be watching. All right, coming up, the Fulton County judge in the investigation into the 2020 election blocks DA Fani Willis from questioning State Senator Burt Jones. We'll discuss next.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Fulton County Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney disqualifies DA Fonnie Willis and the entire DA's office from questioning State Senator Burt Jones, who is also running for lieutenant governor. Now, Phil, you said you could kind of read between the lines last week when you read what the judge had to say in court. So I guess none of us were really surprised.
I was not surprised.
Yeah.
It was terribly an unethical thing to do, to have a fundraiser. She knew that Burt Jones was the GOP lieutenant governor nominee. The runoff had been decided. And so I think that Judge McBurney was upset, as we could tell, and I think that he had no choice but to say, I'm going to draw a line here for the future for all candidates, regardless of party. And so I wish the judge had gone a little further. Now, he should have removed her from all of the alternate elector cases that she's targeting politically and for partisan purposes. He didn't do that, but I think this clearly shows that you cannot have a fundraiser and then target your opponent with a investigation.
Theron, you know, we give Fonnie Willis a lot of praise on the show for her work in trying to reduce crime, but was this a political mistake on her part, do you think?
Well, we'll continue to give her that praise because I think she's earned it, and she's doing a lot of good things as the DA. But Lori, I got to be honest. I mean, I think the optics are not great for her, and this could be problematic for the investigation. But I want to say this: I believe that Fonnie Willis is a woman of integrity. I think that if she could not have maybe done that fundraiser, she probably would not have done it for Charlie Bailey during the runoff. I want to clear up something that, you know, what the judge really said is that it's the optics that look really bad. What's not unethical, and for our viewers, is that Burt Jones still will be questioned. He still has to go through questioning. It just won't be done by District Attorney Fonnie Willis and the people in her office. And so what I think we need to be reminded of is that there still was an attempt. There was a narrative that was spread by these electors, whether they were fake or not, including elected officials, about this election being stolen. And so, the question still remains is that, did you follow the proper protocol, and did you try to hide and not properly be transparent in your electoral process?
He did say that, I'm not going to say it's ethical or unethical. I'm saying it's unethical.
Okay, but I want to make sure.
But it's not ethical when you target somebody like she did.
Martha, then Melita.
I think what's more important about this is a bigger picture than just whether the electors are questioned or not. It's that it used to be lines were really clear about elected officials not really getting that involved openly in politics. I mean, of course they were political, but they didn't host fundraisers. They didn't do. Over the last few years, on both sides, you've seen more and more people do that. And I think the judge kind of, to your point, Phil, kind of put this line down and said, you know what, you need to really think about it. If you can put your name on an invitation. I mean, we had a guy that worked in Senator Perdue's office that almost got fired because his name ended up on an invitation on a race that we weren't even involved in. So I think this line's been getting blurry, and now it's a little tighter.
Especially when you're a district attorney that can hurt people.
Melita.
Well, I think, you know, the thing is, Burt Jones will still be questioned. And I'd love to see them select Linda Dunikowski to question him, because she's one of the most respected prosecutors in the state right now. But the longer term question is, will this opinion by the judge cloud whatever outcome arises from her investigation? Is this now a cloud over her investigation, which is why we're seeing in the national media more attention on the D.C. Justice Department investigation?
All right, let's talk about poll watchers. The RNC has trained more than 1,500 poll watchers and has held more than 30 sessions across the state. Poll watchers are not new, Martha.
No, they're not, but I think it's a good thing to do. Having more people involved in the process is a better thing. Poll watchers are allowed, okay? They have them, Democrat and Republican poll watchers. And this, along with the new 100,000 that have been trained by local election boards and also by the state to be poll workers, I think we're going to have the people that we need to make sure that the election is secure.
Melita.
But we saw in the last election cycle how having poll watchers at a poll who weren't well trained, perhaps, raised a lot of false suspicions and cost counties and the state a lot of money for recounts that weren't necessary. those concerns raised by the poll watchers created a great deal of disturbance and falsehoods.
Wait a minute, they have a right to ask questions. I don't know if they know it's false
I'm not
or
saying
not
they
false.
don't have a right,
well, that's what
but
they were doing, and then you find out later if something is true or false. So poll watchers of both parties, they have a right to have their iPhones there. They have a right to call their lawyers, whether they're Democrat or Republican. You might need a judge to enjoin something that's going wrong, and this has happened in all cycles.
Yeah, but
Well,
what poll watchers are supposed to do, they're on both sides supposed to be defenders of democracy, not conspiracy theories. And I think what Melita is saying is that there was clearly some people on the Republican side, because remember, I talked about this, spreading this false narrative.
Stacey Abrams
No,
had the same
Stacey
thing
didn't
in
do that,
2018.
Phil.
Stacey
She
said
did
she
not.
was governor. She said she should have been
That's
governor.
different than
The point is, you can
Let him
ask
finish.
questions
Let Theron finish.
and then figure out what's going on.
You've already made that point. Theron, finish.
My point is that I think that, look, poll workers, we need more people. We need more poll watchers. And you're right, Lori. I mean, we do it on the Democratic side for a long time because we want to make sure that people knew how to vote. So what the Republicans are doing now, I think, is a good thing. Make sure these
Training
folks
is
are
a good
training.
thing.
But we cannot forget the fact what Melita said is that we had people at the polls on the Republican side last time that were spreading conspiracy theories. And I just hope that they don't do it this time.
All right, let's move on. Opponents of Georgia's new abortion restrictions are filing suit in the state of Georgia, saying the Georgia Constitution is highly protective of an individual's right to be free from political interference with their body, health, and life. Theron, this is a different tactic, one that we discussed earlier, but here comes the lawsuit.
Well, we talked about this. Remember, it's different phases. And Lori, we've talked about this privately. I know we talked a little bit about it on our podcast, is that, all right, what Democrats have got to do, and people who are pro-choice, the decision where Roe v. Wade is made, now the lawyers get involved, and then you're also going to hear more policy sort of discussions. And that's where we are now. Because, I mean, when we see this outrage, people are still marching. People are still very upset. And the poll clearly shows that people oppose this new bill, which I won't call a heartbeat bill because you can't detect a heartbeat in 6 weeks. There's a clear abortion ban.
Martha.
So, in full disclosure, I'm the interim executive director for the Georgia Life Alliance, and we expected this kind of case to come through. I talked with the governor about it on my radio program earlier this week, and they expected it to come through. And look, I think these things need to be litigated, okay? It's going to have to happen. But there's a lot of misinformation, even in those polling questions and how they were asked, because many of the things they were asking people if they were afraid of or concerned about are not part of the bill. So we're going to see where it goes, but you know what? We're going to be happy warriors in this, and we're going to keep moving forward.
They're giving me the wrap. I got to wrap it there. Up next, Senator Jon Ossoff chairs a hearing on the long-term failures and conditions at the U.S. Penitentiary in Atlanta. We'll discuss.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
After a 10-month-long bipartisan investigation, Senator Jon Ossoff said his subcommittee concluded there have been stunning long-term failures of prison administrators, failing facilities, and staff misconduct. Melita, to you first. There's a long list of issues cited. I mean, rat and roach infestations, physical fights among staff. It sounds like a failure by the U.S. Department of Prisons and the Justice Department.
Absolutely. And I think this is a great use of Senator Jon Ossoff's previous work as an investigative journalist, putting him in charge of this committee and letting him use his talents to a high degree. But even the Republican, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, said this whole prison sounds like a horror show, and it did. And so there definitely need to be great changes and many reforms, because as Ossoff points out, even the people in a federal prison are people and deserve to be treated in a humane fashion.
And this is an effective issue for Senator Ossoff to address, Phil.
Well, I think it's an effective issue for all of us to address. It's, to your point, a good bipartisan watchdog committee, and that's what they're supposed to do, and that's we need more of that. And there are some egregious examples of abuse. There's even some examples of egregious abuse in our own Georgia correction system. We can get onto that in another day, but I think it's a good thing.
All right, well, we now know the state of Georgia and local governments are giving a $1.8 billion tax breaks and other incentives to Hyundai Motor Group in order for the automaker to build its first electrical vehicle plant in the U.S. Theron, this is the biggest incentive package to date in the state of Georgia.
It's a big one, and it's something that I'm sure some people are going to have questions about, but I think we all agree that if you can bring jobs to Georgia, particularly in this part of Georgia, the southeast region of Georgia, the coastal area, is really good. Also, electric vehicles are a big thing right now. I mean, look, the conversations I'm having in my family, and I'm sure a lot of families are having, is that do we switch to an electric vehicle because gas prices are going down a little bit, but they're still a little.
No, they aren't.
Lowest in Georgia, though.
Okay, I'll give you that. If you give it that, Biden is working to get along with other people to get the prices down. But no, I think this is good. You know, some people may question the amount of incentives, but ultimately, I think if it brings jobs, it's for a good cause. We should applaud it.
Martha, Hyundai is expected to create more than 8,000 jobs, but there are some skeptics who say this is super risky. It's a super risky investment for state and local leaders.
You know, I just don't think so. You know, I tend to err always on the side of these kinds of deals because I think they're good for Georgia in the long run, for us to continue to be the leader in manufacturing, in all of the other things that we do. Best place to do business. I think it's a good thing.
I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Come November, Gwinnett voters will be asked to vote to renew the penny sales tax that funds county facilities, roads, parks, and other local improvements. The odds of this passing, Theron?
Well, we've been this road before, personally, Lori, but ultimately,
this is just SPLOST, though.
This is SPLOST,
not
right?
For Gwinnett, Martha.
That's correct. I think, look, the one thing you got to do is make sure you educate the electorate, right? And I think they're doing that. And you got to tell them how it's going to not only benefit the county, but also benefit them. And so if you can do that, and by the time turnout is probably not going to be as high as it would be in a presidential year, you will have the opposition maybe a little bit more fired up. But I think you have enough time to try to get this through.
Phil?
Usually these SPLOSTs do pass when you do have a listing, and is it in your neighborhood? Is this something we wanted? People like that. However, I'm not as optimistic about the economy as you are. It's going to be driven downhill by Biden and the Democrats even more. It's going to be tough in this election year to do a tax increase.
You think even for a SPLOST, Melita?
No, because voters in Gwinnett County, and they used to have those two aqua-colored growing Gwinnett water towers when you rolled into the county on 85. They have renewed SPLOST since 1985, and I don't think they're going to change their stripes.
People love the fact that you can go and look at the project, see how much money they said they were going to spend, how much money they actually did spend. And this isn't an increase, it's a continuation of something they're already paying. So I think it's going to pass also.
It's not really a tax increase like she said.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
We'll
It's not
see.
tax
It may
increase.
pass.
Right. And everybody pays it. So,
True.
all right, everyone, coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Finally have a little time to breathe in this block. We have a little bit of time, so Martha, we'll start with you.
So I'm going to start with my loser, and it's Brian Deese, who's the economist for the Biden administration, who 10 years ago said the clear definition of a recession is two quarters of negative growth, and yesterday said it is not the clear definition of a recession that is 2 quarters of a negative growth. So he is my loser this week. My winner is Senator Johnny Isakson, getting the VA named after him. He with all its problems, now I told Senator John Ossoff, you need to make sure you fix it now that you've named it after Johnny Isakson. And then my other winner is a local Gainesville businessman by the name of Doug Hansen. Over the last 2 years, on his own dime, he has gone to the border 5 times. He has covered all 2,000 miles of the border. He has interacted with Border Patrol, with immigrants, with National Guard, and he's brought back the story. And, you know, people need to listen to him because he's done it all on its own.
Great. Melita.
Well, my first winner is the environmentalists along the Georgia coast, particularly the 100 Miles group, who have advocated against the spaceport in Cabinet County. And this week, Union Carbide announced it no longer wishes to sell the land to the county. Now, the county's going to take that to court, but it's a real victory for citizen activism and protecting the environment, and they deserve to be appreciated. Andalusia in Milledgeville, the home of noted author Flannery O'Connor, has just been named to the National Register of Historic Places. And a lot of people over the years helped preserve that home site, so they deserve commendation. And then finally, Atlanta is now one of 4 finalists for the Democratic National Convention. The group was in town on Thursday to hear the pitch from Atlanta, and there were lots of enthusiastic reactions.
Great. Phil.
Well, the Georgia Lottery Corporation really hit a great milestone this week. $25 billion.
Maybe one of us will be billionaires by the time this airs.
That's right. So keep playing the lottery. And, of course, the money goes to pre-K and various educational programs. So congratulations to Gretchen Corbin and her team for continuing to do a great job. And also MARTA, the rapid transit system in Atlanta, they are finally cracking down on passenger behavior. They should have done this before. If you get 3 stations, you're going to be banned, Theron.
Well, I'm a proud supporter of MARTA and a MARTA rider, but no, we're going to get the behavior under control. My first winner is going to be the Honorable Nora Polk. She was recently appointed to the Stone Mountain Judicial Circuit for Superior Court. Our good friend Vince Williams deserves to be a winner this week as well. He's the mayor of Union City, had the National League of Cities meeting here in Atlanta, had over almost 40 or 50 mayors from all over the country come to Atlanta. So Vince Williams did a fantastic job. I also want to make CEO DeKalb County Michael Thurman a winner. He was named this week by the Georgia chapter of the American Society for Public Administrators as the Georgia Public Administrator of the Year. And he also did a wonderful editorial board interview with the AJC. They wrote a wonderful article about how DeKalb is rising and doing a lot of great things. And then I agree with Melita. I think Mayor Andre Dickens, Congresswoman Nikema Williams, the Democratic Party of Georgia, a lot of business leaders all came together to really showcase Atlanta why we should be the city that influences everything and the state that influences everything to be chosen as the host city for the Democratic Convention 2024.
Maybe it'll make up for losing the All-Star game.
You had to get that in
We'll
there.
get that money back.
All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining. We will see you again next week. Bye-bye.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.